buying time, killing people that's in line. Lower class and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force them air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one thinks countries. Laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, it's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one thinks countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.TV, my favorite little network on the internet. And today is the 8th of October. Beautiful weather. Got some severe rain last night, but sun's out and it's nice and warm, and that's the way we like it. Now, actually, my wife this morning told me, she said, "This is weird." I go, "What's weird?" Well, usually by this time in October, it's, there's a bite in the air and it's cooling down rapidly and so on and so forth. And, I told her, and I'm a little bit older than her, probably 100 years. And I just explained to her that when I was a kid, I remember Halloween, that it was pretty much too warm to wear, a jacket or anything under the costume. It was bloody warm. And so it's not like all these, "Oh my God, look at the global warming, it's still warm out." Yeah, folks, it is, and it's cyclical. And I remember a very warm Halloween, and a year before, a year after, I remember wearing parka at Halloween. So, it's just what it is. So enjoy it. And don't worry about the rhetoric. So I just got home. We went up to the reserve this morning to get some smokes, and I had a nice chat with the lady at the gas station there, and I was explaining to her that we need to come together. Okay, and I was explaining to her that all this nonsense about it was the Christians that decimated the native population. I said, "It's absolutely incorrect. It was a corporation." And she goes, "Exactly is what it was. It was the corporation. It was the Vatican. It was the Jesuits. It was a corporation that destroyed the native people. And it is the same corporation that is destroying the nations today. The same damn corporation using the same methods. They stole your children, or they stole the native children to remove the society from those children's minds. And we have the exact same thing going on today in the school system. The government, the corporation has stolen your children, giving you basically no access, no say in anything about what they're feeding your children. They removed the Christian faith from everywhere. Then they fired up here in Canada, Little Moscow on the Prairie. to smooth the idea that the Muslims were wonderful people. Now, I'm not saying any individual from any race, creed, color, anything else isn't a good man or woman. It's the movement behind it. And an awful lot of these people don't even know what's going on. I mean, their homelands were obliterated with bombs, and then they get this offer to come here. A lot of them don't know what the hell's going on. But they're being used. So when we're talking about, when we were going up to the reserve today, well, I tell you about this lady at the reserve first. She says, yeah, we do need to come together. I said, that's one of their games, okay? They use it with the right-left politics, which is divide and conquer. They use it between the races, divide and conquer. They use it between the natives and the rest of us, divide and conquer, and to keep our eyes off of what's actually behind all of this stuff. So she's in total agreement that we have to come together. The people have to come together in order to stomp out this evil that has been wandering around on this planet for way too frickin' long. So on the ride up there today, Paul, my buddy, was talking about, the Las Vegas false flag. And I said, I don't really pay much attention to that stuff. I don't get caught up in it because it's a distraction. And I'm certain there's all kinds of online radios, shows right now yakking about Las Vegas. Just like for years and years and years, they were all yakking about 9/11. And that keeps you distracted from what the real problem is and what you can do about it. Okay, as long as you're being distracted by the noise, that's where your focus is. Now, like I was telling Paul, I don't really pay much attention to these false flags because, think about it. All this stuff's coming out. I see it go by. I don't pay much attention to it. Now we found a new shooter. I think I read somewhere a new arrest was made on another shooter. There's a security guy shooting on the ground, this, that, and the other thing. And I told him, I says, where does Las Vegas, maybe they do, I don't know, but I don't know too many places that do where's all the film of the people being hauled out of here? There's 500 and some people wounded. Does Las Vegas have the facilities to deal with 500 and some wounded and 50 some dead, like lickety split? I don't know. Maybe they do, but it doesn't sound reasonable to me. Most hospitals, you sit in emergency and wait for 2, 3, 4 hours. So how all of a sudden do we have all these facilities to deal with this 500 and some wounded people? So I don't pay much attention to it. I'd like to deal with some real other false flags that have been going on forever. And they just keep creating these false flags. And I'm going to deal with this election in Calgary again because it's a good-sized city. The number of false flags going on in the Calgary election, as they go on in every election. Elections are false flags. A false flag is to get people to believe something that's not true, or make an action that allows the evil ones to manipulate the people in the direction they want them to go to. So elections are false flags. They don't give a damn who gets in, right or left, because they're both boots on the same tyrannical body, taking you somewhere you don't want to end up at. So elections are false flags. And Black Lives Matter is a false flag. And Idle No More is a false flag. The LGBTQ is a false flag. These are all false flags. These are all things that have been made up to manipulate and divide and move the people somewhere they don't want to be at, or to shut people up, put fear in people. That's the main thing of the false flag, is to shock the mind, right? And that's what all of these things are. They're all false flags. and they're used to scare people, fear people, shut people up, make people afraid to speak and to say what's on their minds. So, a typical false flag is setting up Karen Draper in Calgary, who's running for the school board trustee position in wards 12 and 14 out there. And so she was just basically explaining some realities, and the professors of the universities and all the LGBTQ community and everything, total airheads, the whole damn works of them. All you may as well call the universities what do you call it, MKL or MKL indoctrination centers. These people don't have a freaking clue, right, about reality. And they're very dangerous because of that. And so the way they went after Karen, and then Facebook being CIA Jew-run, Karen decided, okay, I'm going to try and move away from this topic that all these people are freaking out about and calling her a radical, and the professors in the university are saying she may not be the only radical, right? She's the only sane one running as a trustee for the school board. The only sane one of the bunch of them. So they jump and freak out. Now, all of the so-called left, I can't say anything bad about a black person because Black Lives Matter. I have to walk tenderly on the native population because we have Idle No More. I can't offend anyone regardless if they claim to be an elephant or a pussycat or a male when they're female. I can't offend anyone. Okay, that's all false flag. So Karen decided, well, all right, these nutcases are just jumping all over me. So I'll try to move the conversation to other subjects that matter as far as education are concerned, because she's running as a trustee for the Board of Education. So she tries to move the conversation over to something math or English, with something to do with education, which LGBTQ has nothing whatsoever to do with education. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're not going to get a certificate that you passed the LGBTQ test. Well, maybe they'll come up with that yet. So she tries to move away from what's everybody freaking out about, and all she did was ask the question. And all hell broke loose. So she tries to move away from that to get into something that really needs to be discussed, like busing of students and who's paying for the supplies in the school and so on and so forth. And so she's trying to put a post in on her Facebook, and a little dial spinning and nothing's going on. So she reloaded it, and poof, her Facebook doesn't exist. And this is in the middle of an election. So they fear Karen, not because Karen's radical, but because Karen has her head on square and understands this stupid game that's being played out and has been played out forever, and is trying to bring some intelligence into the election. So what does the professors in the university and the LGBTQ people do? Right? They put up a booklet in the story of bastardizing Karen as being a radical. The SOS group, which is a Save Our Students group, encouraging parents to download this booklet to ask the candidates for trustee of the school board these pertinent questions that you need to ask these candidates. And there's nothing in it about education. It is all sexual. Every question of any worth in there is a sexual question. And that's under the heading of curriculum. I don't see anything in there about math or sciences or writing or anything. Just sexual questions. And then they're asking the people to mail back into this group if the results of the answers. So in other words, they're asking the constituents to give this information back to these nutty professors so that they can out or attempt to out any candidate for the school board that may say, maybe this LGBTQ thing's gone too far, right? And then they go make it again on the phones and phone the constituents and tell the constituents not to vote for these people. This is beyond ridiculous. And I just put that down as another false flag, something that is created to put fear into people, to shut people up, to move people in a direction they want them to go in. I mean, what's with all these shooting false flags? We want all guns removed, right? They want all, anyone that would question what's going on, shut up. And that's the game. So, it doesn't take a shooting to be a false flag. The false flags are all around us. And they just keep ramping those up. And every one of these things can be followed back to the UN, followed back to the Rockefeller Foundation, followed back to the Carnegie, or any one of 1,000 plus tax-exempt foundations who feed money into the universities and other NGO groups for them to write papers and move agendas down at the local level. It's all false flag, all of it. It's all made up. None of it's real. And, we got to wrap our brains around it. I will not quit harping about how important it is for you people to understand that your power lays exactly where you live. And you have a duty to protect the people that live in your community. Yet, you allow these people pushing these international agendas, which are designed to destroy the nation state, to be implemented by your local councils, and you do nothing about it. Forget Trump. Forget your state governor. Forget your provincial premier. Forget the prime minister. They're not important. None of them are important. They flipped that whole scene upside down again. That's why we got to rock the boat to get this damn boat right side up. The power does not lay at the federal, state, or provincial levels. The power lays where your feet are, and that's your community. And you got to take that community back. Because by taking your community back and each community regaining control of their communities, guess what? You got control of your nation. There's no other way to do it. People just out there bitching and complaining about, I hate the left, I hate the right. Well, I hate both of them with a passion. Because they were specifically created to divide and conquer the people. If you've got a nation that's half left and half right, you ain't got a nation because it's divided, completely divided. And then you throw in the LGBTQ and Idle No More and Black Lives Matter and Occupy and all the rest of the shit and all this migration that's being pounded down our throats. Our borders have been flung wide open. For what reason? To destroy nation states. That's your nation that's being destroyed from the inside. From the inside. And where do you live? Inside your nation. And you must regain the power that is yours because it's your nation. And we have to bring the people together. Then I was really pleased with that conversation I had with that Native woman today. I mean, they get it. Why do they get it? As the other Native lady told me years ago, we lived through it. Now it's your turn. I don't know why this is so difficult for people to understand. You know, the point of the public school system and entertainment, be it movies, television, sports, whatever, is to keep you as a member of the audience, a non-participant, a child. The idea is to keep you in the child mind-like state. And that's exactly what they've done. You may be 20, you may be 40, you may be 60, you may be 80, but you've been kept in the child-like state mentally. That they're the power and you're not, and you got to do what they tell you to do. Just like you did when you were a little child, you might whine and bitch and complain about it. You may have a little hissy fit on the floor, but in the end, you're going to do as you're told. And this is not by accident. This was well planned out. This is why it's so difficult to get people to stand up and run in a local election. They'll make every excuse in the book. Oh, I don't know anything about local politics. Why not? Why don't you know anything about it? Well, that's what they do. Well, they're putting the screws on you. Now, if you're breathing, as far as I'm concerned, you have the capacity to run in a local election. You have the capacity to go out and speak to the people. You know, people are so screwed up. You know, you ask people, all you got to do is print some brochures or flyers and go knock some doors. What's so hard about? Oh, I couldn't do something like that. I couldn't do something like that. Get on the telephone and phone your constituents. Phone people I don't know. I couldn't do something like that. You know, Trump will save us. No, he ain't. There's only one thing that Trump has said that's important. And if you're an American, burn this into your brain hard. Okay? I mean, Trump's got the shackles on him. He's allowed to move here and there and play this game, but he's got the shackles on him. He's got a gun to his head just like every other president, every other prime minister, every other state governor, every premier has got a gun to their head. They've been vetted and they're doing what they're told to do, whether they like it or not. And they get a little bit of leeway, you know, but that collar's on them. But what Trump said, it's time to make America great again. He didn't say the United States, he said America. And America is the people. And it's time that the people step forward and take up that challenge to make America great again. But you can't have a great people if the people are weak of the spirit, mind, and spine. And that is the job of the people, is to strengthen their spirits, their minds, and their spines. Not to start a war, because we're already in the war, and the war is a spiritual, psychological war. That's what all these false flags are about, to keep your spirit weak and your mind and your spine weak, like you can't get up and do anything about it. Well, doing something about it is as easy as going and putting your name down as a candidate, either for the local school board or the local council. Couldn't get easier than that. Most people spend way more than that in a week on lottery tickets. You know, like only the rich get to run for the state governors and the presidents in that. Fine. Well, then you've just said you ain't ever going to be running for those positions. So what positions can you run for? Local level. Global to local. How easy is that? We take the global agenda, we implement it at the local level, and boom, we get the nation. That's the plan. That's what they've been doing for a very, very long time. And you live where they're taking you down because you have a local council, city, town, county council. And that's where you live. That's where you fight from. You don't fight with guns because they want you to start shooting. Because that gets them to bring the hammer down on you. That gets them to play it up in the paper. That this group or that side or this or that is doing this, and pretty soon we'll have to have martial law. If we have martial law, then we're going to come and take your guns. And then you get the rhetoric. Yeah, well, they come try to take my gun, man, I'll be shooting at them. Right. Not real bright. Because now you're dead. And that doesn't help fight a war. Dead people aren't very effective at winning a war. Fearful people are not very effective at winning a war. People weak of the mind, spirit, and spine have no chance of winning a war. And this war, make no mistake, is spiritual and psychological. No violence required. Now, what they did to Karen, and it always backfires. You see, this is why it's so easy to get our nations back. Well, I had Karen on the show last night for the last half hour, 40 minutes, whatever. And her spirit is just getting stronger. Her mind's getting stronger. Her spine's getting stronger. And they have done everything to bastardize her. It's just making her stronger and wiser and learning this game better. Now, if you run, I'm just going to keep saying 3-1, run 5-1, run 7-1. But the point is that regardless of where you live, whether it's a big community or a small town or a big city, it doesn't matter. There's only so many counselors. You know, the smaller the town, the less counselors. Usually, I think the least is about 5. Calgary, being over 1 million people, has got 14. So you got 1 million people, you need 42. 42 people. Make it, 42 will work. That's 3-1. Now you own the message, so the professors and the experts and the media, they can't overcome the message now. You swamp them, okay? And you will gain majority vote. And now you have control. You've just taken back your community. Then your job is to educate your community to the evils and how we're going to shake them out of here. But you hold the power cards now. Now we sweep this across our nations. It's just the same thing as they do. They have templates. They use their templates. We don't have a template. We best get one made. Okay, and the best template is the 3-1. You have 3 times as many people as they do running. That means your message will overpower their message. That means your chances of getting a majority vote, you don't need to win all the seats. You just need to win the majority of the seats. So in a small town with 5 councilors, you only need to win 3 seats. That's it. 3 seats. You got majority vote on every issue that comes forward. How powerful is that? That is complete power. Not a shot fired. Okay? Not a shot. And you've got control of the council. So now you've got the blockage on the global to local nonsense. And deal with local matters. With local solutions. Not global solutions, local solutions for your local neighborhood. So that instead of every single community being the same, just like in that book 1984, why don't we get out of here, says the girlfriend to Winston. And Winston goes, go where? He goes, anywhere. And then Winston says, but everywhere is the same. Now how boring is this world? You know? It used to be nice when you would go to different towns and you would have the nuances of the town, because it was the local people that decided how this was going to be. And you had all the local, independent, locally owned and operated businesses and manufacturing that would use the resources of their particular area to build what it is they could build, and then they would market that out. Every town was different. Now you go into any town, you notice the small, medium-sized businesses don't exist for the most part now. You're dealing with global retail, global manufacturing. You go in, it's getting really boring. You go into a town and you see the same coffee shops that you saw in the last 20 towns you were in. You see the same big box stores the last 20 towns you were in. Everything is the same, which means you don't control your local area. An outside entity is controlling it. And that's just plain boring. It's time to make America great again. I love that. I absolutely love that. Because America is the people. The United States is the corporation. It's time to make America great again. That's the people. Make the people great again. And when the people, once again, have a strong spirit, mind, and spine, they have confidence. And once you have a people that are confident, you can't deceive them anymore. You can't screw with them anymore. And now you have a free people. So make America great again. That's your job. It's your duty. Your forefathers came to get out from under the tyranny, and they came in search of freedom and peace. You see any freedom and peace in the world? No. Because we've become weak. We've been deceived. We've allowed ourselves to be deceived. We've allowed ourselves to be so distracted by the noise that's coming from every direction at you 24/7, you can't think anymore. And that's got to stop. That's got to get turned around. I find Calgary the most interesting thing I've seen in a long time, because it really shines the light on everything that's wrong everywhere. Number one, Calgary has a Muslim mayor. How the hell that happened? Through manipulation. A lady who cares about your children and cares about her child, which will be entering school in the not too distant future, who's speaking the truth, gets completely hammered. And the folks of Calgary managed to get the fluoride out of the water in 2011. And now again we have the professors and the experts saying that by taking the fluoride out of the water, you've harmed the children. How ludicrous is this, okay? Fluoride is an industrial waste product and it's poisonous. Yet we have the professors and the doctors and the dentists and the experts saying that, you know, it's like the same as a vaccine and the climate change and the LGBTQ and all the rest of this rhetoric. That if you don't do this, then you don't care, and that means you're a problem. So if you don't poison your children's bloodstreams with vaccinations, you're a problem. If you don't poison your water with fluoride, you're a problem. If you don't indoctrinate your children into some strange lifestyle, you're a problem. It's time to quit bitching and complaining about all this stuff, folks, and get active. Now, Karen proved something to me last night, which I've known forever, and I've never protested anything in my life. I've never filled out a, what do you call those things? You fill out a paper and send it into the government, a petition. That's what children do. Whining and complaining when they want a chocolate bar or they don't want to do something. That is the epitome of childlike behavior, because they can't bring themselves to engage properly. So I've never been involved in it, but Karen has been involved in quite a bit of it over the last year or so as she's gathering information and trying to understand what the hell's going on, and I must take my hat off to her. She did a very in-depth study very quickly and continues to do so, is self-educating very well. But all through these protests and that, she was using those to, you know, figure out what the hell's going on here and to encourage people to run in these local elections that are taking place in Alberta right now. And out of all of her efforts, she got one guy to run as a counselor in whatever ward, and when the S hit the fan with all of this negativity against Karen from the powers that be, these are the powers that ought not to be, and that's what we got to do. They're the powers that need to be run out. So when her friend, when all this started to hit the papers and that about Karen, who just simply asked a question, wasn't making any negative statements really, just asked the question. And so her friend gets a hold of her and asks that he not be connected to her in any way, shape, or form. That's really pathetic. That is beyond pathetic. But that's the way it is. We are in the infancy here of the beginnings of a great movement, and is movement of the people. into positions of power. And it's been very difficult to get people to understand what their duties are. Lots of people bitching and complaining, but extremely few of the people stepping up to the plate. Now, you can't win the ball game if you ain't in the ball game. You can't win the ball game sitting in the bleachers. Okay, so you work at jobs you don't like, and then you're pissed off and you're stressed out, so let's go to the ball game or the hockey game or whatever. And, this is exactly what they did to the slaves in Rome. They had the Colosseums so that you would slave all week, and then on the weekend they would provide entertainment for you. Nothing's changed. You're in the audience. I see the stadium's full today, Bill. Yes, we've got 60,000 plus people in the stadium today watching a few guys throw a baseball around. That's wonderful. So, what do you think? The Red Sox will win this year? I don't know. They've made some new trades and all. This is bullshit, man. This is all just noise. And you people buy their corporate logos. You buy their corporate food. You are just fools in the audience. Well, your nation is going down the sewer hole, which means your futures are going with it. Which means the children have no future. Your grandchildren have no future. But you're more interested in the ball game and who won the ball game. Now, you got to understand, a lot of people are bitching and complaining about the power of the corporation. But when you go to the ball game or whatever you go to, be it a movie, doesn't matter what you go to, you're actually watching some guys at work. You may work in an office, you may work in a factory, you may be independent, your own business. But when you go to one of these events, you're paying your good hard-earned money to watch somebody work. Who are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to entertain you. But that's their job. You know, you're not walking down the street and watching somebody build a house and stand on the sidewalk and watch them working on the house for a while. No, you're paying big bucks to go watch some guys play a game, which is their job. So you're actually paying to go watch somebody work. Same as a movie. The problem is, these things are all done to keep you in the audience. And you're paying to be kept in the audience. You're paying to buy a hat or a t-shirt. And they're all corporate t-shirts. They're not team. It's a corporation. You're going and you're paying a corporation large amounts of money so they can pay their workers, the team, large amounts of money to get you into the audience. So you can have these mindless conversations out about a particular ref who made a bad call or a team that's not playing up to snuff or whatever. But you're just in the audience. Nothing you say or do has any positive outcome. It's not going to change whether the team wins or loses. And this is the same thing you're doing in your real life. You're just in the audience. You're not participating. Oh yeah, you bitch and complain about the politicians, you bitch and complain about what's going on in the schools, but you're not participating, you're just in the audience. And as long as you're in the audience, you can have no positive outcome. You can't change the rules of the game. You can't decide who's going to win what. Because you're just in the audience. Because you've been kept in a child mind-like state. You're not real men and women. You're just fooling yourself if you think you are. Somebody comes to your house and tells you that you can't have that car in the driveway because it's not plated. Oh, I'm sorry. What am I supposed to do with it? We don't care, but if you don't move it, we'll come move and send you a bill. Oh, okay, I better do that. Thought it was your property. You know, they can stick any piece of paper in front of your face anymore, and you just instantly submit, like a child. Like you were taught to do in the school system. It's time we grow up. It's time we understand our duties as men and women. It's time to get out of the audience. Now, a lot of people don't try out for the ball team because they don't think they have the capacity. That's probably true. But use the same excuse in the rest of your life to remain in the audience. Well, I don't know nothing about municipal politics. Well, that's pretty dangerous right there. I don't follow politics. That's pretty damn dangerous. What runs your life? Politics. That's exactly what runs your life. But you don't want to know nothing about it. You don't want to be involved in it. Well, I go and I vote on every election, but you don't really know what the freaking issues are. You don't know the backgrounds of who you're voting for. Well, I have to vote because I'm supposed to vote. Well, guess what you're doing? Voting, I guess, is like getting a ticket for the ball game, isn't it? Because you have no power on the decision of the outcome. It's already been pre-made. But you think you're participating when you're really not. You're just handing in your ticket for the game, or getting your ticket for the game. And the game would be the local vote. And a lot of people don't go to the game. You know, there's no lower number as far as who participates in a local election. These people run your lives. They run them from the local level, but they're directed from the global level. So the globalists are dictating to you how you're going to live. And you don't know who these globalists are. Oh, well, you know, the municipality put in a new bylaw. Okay, where'd they come up with that nonsense? Well, they did. No, they didn't. Global to local. They're implementing the global agenda at the local level, then they're passing bylaws to help the global takedown, or the globalist takedown of your nation, starting at the local level. Because if you go and you look, you know, I don't care where you live, there's been a vision statement or a forward statement or something made at your local level where they lay out, you know, where we're going forward to. But that's a template that they didn't make up. It was sent to them, fill this out, make it local, and implement it. Which makes your council treasonous. It makes a danger to you and your families. But you don't want to get involved in it. If someone was trying to break in your house, would you get involved with that? Or would you just invite them in and sign your house over to them? Because that's what you're doing. You're signing your nation over to the internationalists. And it will be international law that you're going to be hooked to. We already are. So do you want your nation or not? Do you want to be the architects of the future of your family's children and grandchildren? Or do you wish someone who is very evil to decide your future for you? They'll give you something more to whine and bitch about, I guess. I mean, I'll never forget, I ran in one election. I was talking to a guy in the street, and I was saying something, and he was telling me that he's very well informed. I go, really? Are you? Yes. I read both papers, the right and the left. Well, that really threw me. I thought, man, you're stupid times two. I'm well informed because I read both the right and the left papers, which are coming out of the same house. It's really quite pathetic. So, I would invite people to go and, check out the Calgary election and see how much the media and the professors and the universities control your mindset. Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Now, I'm going to try and call Faye, because I think she would be very good at explaining another aspect of this Calgary election, which is the fluoride question. Now, she gave me, what's it called here? Where did I write that down? The O'Brien Institute, I believe it's called. Yeah, which is part of the University of Calgary, which is completely connected to the United Nations, because they're all standing there with their little United Nations flag, or at the United Nations, having all kinds of goodness heaped upon them. And it's just another one of these institutions that are working to implement the globalist agenda. Now, this idea that nationalism is bad, I mean, if you think about that even for a moment, you would go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, of course it doesn't make any sense. Nationalism is good. That means you care about your nation. It means you care about your people. You care about their futures. But because you've been overpowered by media and movies and televisions, newspapers, nationalism's bad. Why, look at Germany. Think of Hitler. Think of the 6 million Jews. That's what nationalism did. So the last thing we want to be is nationalists. What a load of bunk. But this is right out of the Rockefeller Foundation, which was big in the UN development and that, and the public school system and the hospital system. I mean, if anybody studied the Rockefeller clan at all, you know how nefarious this group of people were and are. So, you know that these people are evil. And so when Rockefeller says, I've been accused of being an internationalist, and if that be the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it. So we're talking about international rule, which is the death of the nation state, which is the death of your homeland. This idea that nationalism is bad and people are running, oh, you're a nationalist, woo. Well, you're listening to someone that's completely brain dead. Nationalism is all you got, folks. That's all you got is nationalism. You lose your nationalism, you've lost your nation. You've lost your pride. You've lost your ability to provide for yourselves. Look at these nations now. You know, the old UN rhetoric, we're all interconnected. In other words, no nation can stand on its own 2 feet. No nation can provide for itself. Find a car that's built in one nation. Can't do it. And we can't even feed ourselves anymore. And that is part and parcel of the end of the nation state. They can shut down your food trucks anytime they want. And they can use any excuse to do it. A fuel shortage, internet goes down, communication's gone. All of a sudden, you ain't got no food. Your grocery store is empty. They're in the business of false flags. That's what they do. And they're very good at it. Thankfully, people are finally starting to catch on to it. But climate change is a false flag. All of these things that they're telling you that are good are all false flags. They're all created by this same group of nasty people. You know, this is the Third World War. It's a fight between good and evil right now has the good people in the corner. Now, the upside is there's so many more of us than there are of them. We need to self-educate, educate each other, so that we can go and start taking back the power at the local level. No more of this disconnect on politics. And make no mistake about it, I hate politics. In fact, I want politics. I want that word eradicated someday from the dictionary. I don't want politics to exist anywhere on the planet. Because politics is another part of the divide and conquer game. You know, people say, well, I voted for so-and-so. No, you didn't. You voted for a party member. And in etymology, party says to divide. That's why you have 2 main parties, to keep you divided. Confused, messed up. Now, as Karen discovered, it doesn't take a long time to figure this out. It doesn't take a long time to read a few documents on how they're pulling this off. And I'm so happy when Karen last night, she sounded really good and her spirit was strong. It didn't matter what they came at her with. She's standing. She ain't bowing down and she ain't running, because she knows she's right. Now just imagine if there was 42 Karens running in the election in Calgary. Just imagine that. Because those 42 would inspire another 42, which would inspire another 42, and pretty soon we have active people, not audience. And that's how fast we can get our nations back. It's that freaking simple. Not complicated. It's not expensive. And it's really not that time consuming. All you got to do is step up to the plate. You know, you can't hit the ball if you're sitting in the audience because you ain't got the bat in your hand and you ain't at the plate. You can't hit a home run. You can't get to first base if you're sitting in the audience. Everything's scripted, and we're not writing the scripts. We're not hiring the actors. So we sit in the audience and we boo and we laugh and we awe and we clap and we sneer, just like they want us to do, as they tear our nations to pieces. What's not sustainable? Private property is not sustainable. What else is not sustainable? Private transportation is not sustainable. I want to drive you into the cities and remove your right of private transportation, and now you can go anywhere they allow you to go, according to their schedules and to where their transit lines go. Is that what you really want? I hope the hell not. I hope not. You see, these idea of these autonomous cars that they're coming out with, where it just drives itself. Well, these cars are all programmable. Now, I guarantee I can find documents on it if I go looking for them. But in the future, these cars will be programmable, which means they won't leave the city, or you'll need a special permit to leave the city. Is this what you want? You know, when we were driving up to the reserve today, Paul was talking about, you know, he says, you really think all these scientists are wrong about climate change? And I went, yeah. They're just pushing a false flag. I said, but, you know, you don't do any study on any of this stuff. So, you know, there's thousands and thousands of scientists that says it's all bunk. But you don't read about them in the media, except maybe they might show up somewhere just to be tore apart like they went after Karen. But no, it's all nonsense. And so, well, what about the CO2 in that? All nonsense. CO2 is what you exhale. And as the Club of Rome said, therefore, man is the enemy. And you are the enemy. And they want to vastly depopulate the planet. Which is why they want the fluoride back in the water, which is why they want to continue to make up new vaccines. These are all poison. You're being poisoned. Your food is poisoned. Your water is poisoned. Your medicine is poisoned. Your food is poisoned. The air is poisoned. Now, if these people were so concerned about the environment, would they poison the water and the lands and the air? Would they do that? Of course not. But then they're evil. Everything is upside freaking down. Can you grab that, hon? Somebody's on the horn there. Pat? Oh, you're not even in here. Just hang on a second, folks. I want to see who this is. Hello. Oh, hi, Mom. How are you doing? Me too. Me too. Yeah. What time? Around 4-ish? Okay. Okay. I got to let you go. I'm in the middle of doing a radio show. Okay, bye. Sorry about that. It's just my mom calling. I guess we're going to go over for Thanksgiving dinner after, which would be nice. See my nieces and my grandnieces and that, and nephews. But back to what we were talking about, you know, and Paul's on about, you know, I told him that one of the IPCC guys, I think he was Ukrainian. I'll have to look that up, which I suppose I could. I think it's right on my right on my blog, which for some reason I can't access anymore. We'll just look this up and see if it's still sitting there, because I want to make sure I get the right guy's name, if it's still there. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm not sure where this guy was from. I thought he was from the Ukraine. Maybe not. That's what I told Paul, and he's pretty freaked out about it. I said IPCC official Otmar Edenhofer, speaking in November of 2010, advised that one has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. Instead, climate change policy is about how we redistribute the world's wealth. Now, you can't be more plain than that. You can't be more plain than that. And then he got on about, the Amazon and how they're cutting all the trees down. He says, don't you think that's a problem? And I said, well, no, that's another false flag, because you see, if this was that important, then to a carbon sink, which it may be, but why are they cutting the trees down? Okay. Problem, reaction, solution. Do you think that the world, if the world was in this precarious a position that they say it is, that those trees would be allowed to cut? No, they're cutting the trees on purpose. There's no difference in the Exxon Valdez. That was a false flag. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We want to get people off fossil fuels, so let's spill some fossil fuels all over the place. We have more pipelines bursting now than ever before. Why? You can't build a decent chunk of pipe? No. We're pushing an agenda. Just the way it is. And here's a thing from Karl Marx while I'm on my site. Exploiting the weak and well indoctrinated. For the bureaucrat, the world is a mere object to be manipulated by him. And that's from Karl Marx. So they've indoctrinated you through the school system. They've made you weak of spirit, mind, and spine. And the bureaucrat's job is simply to manipulate you, which is your local councils, which is your local school boards. Because these are all run by bureaucratic systems. So you're being taken down from the inside. And as Cicero said, I love what this guy said. I mean, this was 42 freaking BC. 42 BC. That's like even longer than last week. A nation. That's where we live. That's who we are. A nation is a people. A nation can survive the fools, its fools, and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from where? From within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known, and he carries his banners openly. So you see who the enemy is because they're standing outside your gates threatening to come in. So you know who your enemy is and you can defend against that enemy. But the traitor moves among those within the gates. This is not an attack from outside the gates who you could defend against. This is moves among those within the gates freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself, for the traitor appears not traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to the victims, and he wears their face and their garments, and he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of a city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist a murderer is less to be feared. And that was way back in 42 BC. When are we going to get it, folks? When are we going to get it? And when are we going to stand up to it? It's not difficult to see. It's right in front of your face. It's in every neighborhood in your nation. And we got to come to terms with it. And we have to deal with it. I mean, reading that thing from Cicero and looking at the Calgary election, I mean, you couldn't spell it out any clearer. They're working in the night, stewing up these silly things like how are we going to take the voice away from certain counselors or certain people or certain candidates? How are we going to shut them down? And they're making up these little booklets and asking the constituents to ask specific questions of candidates. And if they don't answer them right, they're asking them to send them back in so they can attack. They're not outside the gates, they're inside the gates. And it's the bureaucracy. That runs the show. It is not the elected officials that run the show, it's the bureaucracy. I mean, you take any town or city and you say, well, he's the mayor or she's the mayor. No, okay, they're the mayor, but they only got one vote. They have no special powers. It's all been taken away from them. They need somebody for ribbon cuttings and whatnot and photo ops, so they have a mayor. But the real power at the local level lays in the office of the CAO/city manager. They are the ones who are implementing the agendas from outside to inside. They're the ones that run the show. City mayors, the CAOs, are the ones that set the agendas for the councils. And the councils don't want anybody inside that council that they haven't previously vetted. They want two types of people. They either want airheads that are easily manipulated, or they want those who understand the program 100%. That's who they want on those councils, and that's who they've got on those councils. So when the CAO, city mayor, brings forth an agenda, it almost always passes. And that's treason from the inside. Using international agents who look like you, sound like you, walk like you, talk like you, to take you down. Why are we just sitting back allowing this to happen? When the solution is sitting right in front of your frickin' faces at the local level. It's 3-1. And 3-1 is, marketing. If you can sell 1 out of 3, you're doing fine. You sell 1 out of 2, you're pretty impressive. 1 out of 1, I guess you're a superhero, but they don't exist. But 1 out of 3, a good salesman should be able to close 1 out of 3. So you run 3-1. Your odds on gaining majority vote at that council level, taking your middle finger and stuffing it in the face of your city manager, CAO, to disarm. Because once you've got the majority vote, doesn't matter what the hell the city manager or the CAO brings forward, you got the final say on it. And all of these CAO city managers have been specifically trained to implement the international agenda, mostly known as the UN agendas. And now you have control of your local neighborhood, your local town or city. And once you have control of that, then you have the opportunity to do the massive deprogramming that needs to take place. And once the people see, and once they know, they can no longer ever again be deceived. And at that point, we have our nations back. At that point, we go back to a real system of knowledge/education. We grow intelligent, mindful people who will never again allow treason from within, because the eyes will be watching, just like the eyes of the traitors is watching to see if anybody steps forward with the truth to stomp it out any way possible. Well, once we have control, any treason that shows up, we will be stomping that out so that it never raises its ugly head in our nations again. It's the people that have to guard the nation. And, we let our guard down bad, and our nations are a mess because they're not controlled by the people. I mean, if you let someone control your home, what are you going to end up with? Probably not what you want. If you let someone come into your home and set the rules and regulations of how you're going to live in your own home, you're probably not going to be too pleased with that. You wouldn't allow it. But our house, our nation, has been infiltrated. And outsiders are telling us how we're going to live. Outsiders are telling us what the rules and regulations are. The outsiders are writing new rules and regulations as I speak. To further diminish your freedom. Man, we've become weak. And we're watching as Otmar said from the IPCC, we're presently watching the great redistribution of your labor, which is your wealth. And we're not doing a damn thing about it. And that's sad. That is very, very sad. I don't know what it takes to inspire people that they have a responsibility. You know, we need to move this to a positive position. We need to rock the boat. If you don't rock the boat, ain't nothing going to change. If you don't rock the boat, you can't flip it right side up. You can't flip it upside down or back or right side up again, where you now have the possibility of freedom and peace. If we don't flip the boat, we are going to have a continued forever wars, which is the plan. I mean, the United Nations was set up supposedly so that if any other nation, when we gather all the nations together, the great peacekeeper, that when one nation gets uppity, the other nations will explain to that nation, don't do that, and back them down. Well, how's that worked out so far? There's been no peace. There has been no peace since the United Nations showed up. None. And that goes back to 1984, this continual fighting of against these faceless terrorists and that for all time. We gotta fix this. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anyways, I'm going to see if I can't get a hold of Faye. If I can't get a hold of Faye, I'll get a hold of Hal. I was sent an awful slew of emails yesterday. Not just little paragraph, hey, how's it going? Did you hear this? I mean, these are massive freaking emails with a lot of information in them. And, I just scanned through them. But, again, I said this last night, and I'll say it again. I couldn't figure out why this three-term counselor had been marginalized the second he put his name as a candidate for the mayor. Well, now I know why. Because they're trying to get the fluoride back in the water in Calgary, and he, who's running for mayor, was one of the signatories on the document that removed the fluoride from the water in Calgary. And now I know why he got sidelined the way he did. He's a threat to the internationalists. And therefore move that boy over here. I mean, when the election began, he was favored basically either to win or give the Mayor Naheed Nenshi, or Nancy, a real run. The latest poll has him sitting at has Chabot sitting at 6%. How'd that happen? Not by accident, folks. Now the polls, we know the polls are all skewed. We know the polls aren't true. You may as well call the polls a false flag. For those in the audience. But this is the way it is. So study the Calgary election, and hopefully it will encourage you to do your duty and get the hell out of the audience. get in the game. I'm going to see, I don't know, Faye may be out beating the bushes today, I'm not sure. I would like her to talk about, because she was one of the folks that was instrumental in having the fluoride removed from the water in Calgary. You know, we have the left and the right. Now, I didn't know this, but Ralph Klein, who was, the great premier of Alberta, I didn't know he'd been the mayor of Calgary. I didn't know that. And I didn't know his last act before he left as mayor of Calgary was to fluoridate the water. Now, Ralph Klein was also hooked up with the Enronization of the electricity market in Alberta. And people still hold Ralph up as this great Albertan. He was a puppet of the internationalists just like everybody else. Now we're going to change that, and we're going to start putting people into municipal councils who are not puppets of anybody. Now, I hope Faye's home, because she's really involved in this fluoride thing big time.
Hello.
Hello, Faye.
Yes, Ron. Is it Ron?
No, it's Nahid. I'm just calling to ask if, and I was talking to the university, and they asked if I could call you. Isn't my English good for a Muslim? Anyways, they were asking if I could call you, and you would maybe back down on this fluoride thing, please. How are you, my dear? I just called. I hopefully got a few minutes. I've been talking about this fluoride and stuff, and the election. I think the election in Calgary is a great lesson if people would pay attention to what's going on there. A great lesson to the people that the elections are actually a false flag. Well, they are.
Yeah.
So where we had the, I was talking last night about the pamphlet that the Save Our Students put out to ask the candidates for the school board to ask the candidates, because there may be more radicals out there than just Karen, right? And when I got to curriculum, these are questions. The curriculum is straight sexual.
Right.
When I went to school, the curriculum had something to do with maths and sciences and stuff, but not this one.
It's not reading, write, and arithmetic. What is
no.
Rape.
So what? Yeah. So what you were telling me about the fluoride thing, and I don't know if I mentioned that to you. I was going through your emails, and they're quite lengthy. But I was scratching my head. How did Andre Chabot come out as the contender for to be mayor, and now he's sitting at 6%? What's going on here? But then when you told me about what the university and the O'Brien Institute, it was part of the university, is up to, and they're going after candidates that are anti-fluoride. And then when I was going through your emails, I noticed that in 2011, when the fluoride was taken out of the water, which you had a big part in getting accomplished, whose name is on that document but Andre Chabot?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, now I understand what the hell's going on with Andre Chabot. Okay, he is a threat to the establishment of the universities and the internationalists and that. And so, I didn't have that connection until yesterday when I went through those emails, and I went, how dirty can this possibly get?
Right.
So now you'd mentioned quickly about something about they're basically doing the same thing as they did to Karen, that they have I don't know if they're going after candidates. Am I correct on this, that are anti-fluoride?
Yeah. Well, they had a press conference early in the campaign, like a few weeks ago, and they at this press conference they put forward to the media that they were going to be sponsoring, trying to encourage candidates to put the fluoride back in, and so their purpose was to endorse the candidates who were pro-fluoride and almost to demonize those who were not on board with the protocol.
And where was that, at a university or
No, it was held at a community center, Montgomery, I think, Community Association, and I think it was fairly well attended. I didn't get the information. I got the information when it was happening, like it was going to be at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning or something.
Right, that's when they do things when people can't attend.
And I didn't hear about it, but a friend of mine did attend it, and she said it was just ugly that they were, it was just this whole group that had gotten together. And, it's the same gang. They have been putting on their campaign ever since, fluoride was taken out. There are always these articles in Calgary that appear about, the dentists are seeing the teeth of the children just falling out, and how bad it is, since the fluoride's gone, the teeth are so bad.
I read some of those things, and
so it's been an ongoing campaign. They've been orchestrating behind the scenes. They obviously have money to do this, and they obviously have the ear of the media. They get their little articles out, and then of course they have their token dentists or pediatricians that they have the quotes from, and on it goes. And
nowhere in the media does it say that fluoride, the sodium fluoride, is actually an industrial waste product, which is absolutely poison.
They don't use sodium fluoride anymore. They use the hydrofluosilicic acid.
Okay.
I showed you the picture of that on one. I think one of the last emails I have photos, and I was actually, early during our fight, I was taken into the water treatment plant by a guy who worked there, and oh God, you had to wear a hazmat suit to go into the fluoride room, right? And it was an ugly room. There's a huge vat, like it's about 2.5 stories tall, a wooden vat which is rubber lined because it eats through metal, right? And then they pump this stuff into the water.
But on the upside, that guy's never had a cavity. It's ludicrous. I was reading some of the stuff from some of the studies. And one thing people have to understand is the word data, okay? And this data is a tool of manipulation, okay? They skew the data to get the result they want, and then they put it forward as some scientific result, and it's not.
Well, there was actually, there was a dentist in New Zealand. Let me see, what was his name? He's the one who wrote the book, Why I Changed My Mind About Fluoridation. His name is Calhoun. He's dead now. But there was a quote from him saying that he was annoyed because the health authorities were twisting the data and fudging the facts. And, his battle was with the health gang.
Yeah, it's no different than vaccines or climate change or anything else, right? We want this outcome, therefore we must have the data fit the outcome we want, and they just do it.
Right.
Now,
is the map of Canada, I think the interesting thing is that Vancouver and Victoria never did fluoridate, and I think it's because there were a lot of alternative health people, Chinese people, right, who battled it in those areas. Montreal, I don't think fluoridated, and you remember the old days when, I don't know where you were around when, Front Page Challenge, who were the two guys on Front Page Challenge that...
Pierre Burton and...
Pierre Burton and who was the other guy?
The little guy? What the hell is his name? Oh,
anyway,
that's a long time ago.
He was notorious for calling it rat poison, and they actually kept fluoride out of Montreal's water because they had so much pollution already on the St. Lawrence Seaway that they just absolutely didn't fluoridate. And I guess in the Atlantic provinces, they didn't really fluoridate. And it's really just Toronto that is the big fluoridation place, and Winnipeg is heavily fluoridated. Toronto, Winnipeg, and then our other Alberta cities. I think the city that was downstream from Medicine Hat never did fluoridate because they had a lot of pollution in the Bow River, and they didn't ever fluoridate. And Regina, I think the native people stood up and wouldn't allow fluoridation in.
Well, I saw a thing, it was in a study or something, where one of the professors was saying that, like when they took the fluoride out of the water in Calgary, they made a very, very good reason to take the fluoride out. One was the outrageous cost of it.
Well,
and
it
two,
was eating and corroding the pipes, and they were going to have to replace all the equipment.
Yeah, it was like a $6 million upgrade or something, plus $750,000 a year to put it in the water. But in that little document with the signatures, of which Andre Chabot was one of the signatories, was that the idea of wasting all this money to fluoridate all the water when only a very minor amount of it is actually drank. You use it for dishes, showers, toilets. It's a ridiculous amount because fluoride, you can buy it anywhere you want. If you want fluoride, go buy fluoride, right? So they made very good sense of what they were talking about. But now I see one of the professors saying that it's not. They put forward why they took it out. One of them was a cost reason. And so I saw an article from one of the professors or whatever saying that it's not a cost problem because we worked it out. It's only $60 a head, right? So it's not a financial problem, right?
It's not $60. Is it 60 cents or something? I don't know.
Well, they said $60, I think, to rebuild, and like the $6 million and the $750,000 a year, whatever it was.
Rebuild,
yeah. It was $60 per head, so it's not a financial issue. Well, no, but it's a manipulation issue.
It's not with all the arguments, like we went through a huge fight in the 90s, and that was when Mayor Bronconnier, and he mandated that there would be a fluoride study, whatever, and they handpicked 5 professors to sit on this panel, and it was all bogus. They spent $1 million, and they endorsed that fluoride was good, but they would reduce fluoride to 0.7 parts per million. This is the great thing that they came out with, and it was all just a scam. But the mistake that we made in our first 20 years of the battle, we did not use the right language. It wasn't until people started using the word criminal act. It is a criminal act to put poison in public drinking water. Until those words came out, and that public hearing, people came out with words like malpractice. It's malpractice for these university professors to be promoting this stuff. So that's the language that got it out. The fact that it's a criminal act to be doing this. And until we became very upfront about pushing that element and naming the names of the criminals, it wasn't until we did that they addressed it.
Well, I have I have a book from it was during the Spanish War or something, 1912 or whenever the hell it was, whatever, it's old, 1902, whenever it was a really old book. And
I think I have that same book, and it calls it a fraud, right, or something.
I don't think so. But the doctors Let me see if I can dig this out. Let's see. I got so much written about vaccines on my blog. See if we can dig this book out. It's well worth people reading. WHO Memos 1972 explains how to turn vaccines into a means of killing. Is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Environmental workplace owner.
This is the game they play. They'll interview somebody about who is anti-fluoride, and then at the very end of the interview, there was a CBC interview, and there was a fellow from Lethbridge who was on the interview. He did a great job of presenting how bad fluoride was. At the very end of the interview, they asked him, "Oh, what are your thoughts about vaccines?" And of course he said, "Oh, vaccines are bad too," and blah, blah. "Oh, then you're one of these anti-vaxxers." So they
this is what they do. This is what they do, right?
Label of, you're just totally anti-medicine. Well, you bet we're anti-medicine. It's the medical mafia, and we know we're fighting you, and you're all
exactly.
You're profiting from death and disease.
This book is called Horrors of Vaccination Exposed and Illustrated, written in 1920. And
there were many books written way back then.
And they called it blood murder. It's a letter by a whole bunch of doctors to the president. It says, "Wisdom and law. Every law not based on wisdom is a menace to the state." It's a very good book. It's back when people could actually write.
Right.
And it really hammers home the ugliness of what's going on, and this stuff didn't happen yesterday. When they called it a blood murder,
right?
And that's when they were vaccinating the troops. Right? They were using them as guinea pigs in order to move it into the general public.
Well, my grandfather died during the 1918 flu epidemic, and my mother would never allow me to be vaccinated when I was a child because she was very aware. There had been a lot of writing about how that flu epidemic was created.
Right. Well, here's a little. I don't know what page this is. Page 9 of this book's 245 pages long. I should put this in the chat. Public challenge to health departments: deaths from vaccinations denied and concealed. Sounds like the fluoride situation as well. More deaths from vaccination than from smallpox. Now, later on, I found a document out of Poland, I believe it was. And it was a comparison of what the hell was that? Where you lose the polio, and they it's a graph of the places that were given the polio vaccine, and Poland, which was not vaccinated for polio, and the charts are identical. Yeah. Absolutely identical. They'll lay right over top of each other because what a virus is, the virus comes in strong, hits the weak, and then it becomes weakened, and the people become stronger to that virus. So that's why you have an immune system. And all the vaccinations do is screw with your immune system to make your immune system weaker so that you're more susceptible, not less susceptible, to becoming ill.
Do you know Guylaine Lanctot? She is the medical doctor down there in Quebec who wrote the book The Medical Mafia, and in her book she talks about it. She talks about it very articulately, and she's also been on the Ritchie show. What's his name?
Not sure.
Talking about vaccination. She is a very good. She's a Canadian hero whose name we never hear.
Well, you don't hear from those telling the truth.
Exposes the medical mafia and what they've been up to.
Well, they've been up to no good.
They called her up on the carpet because she was exposing all this stuff, and she was treating her patients with, guess what, proper food and proper nutrition, proper whatever.
Well,
instead of pushing the drugs. So they called her up, the College of Physicians and Surgeons called her up and did a trial. And in the middle of this trial, she walked away from it. She declared herself an independent physician. And then she wrote the book, The Medical Mafia, which should be in everybody's library.
I'll look that up.
It exposed, I can actually send you the link to the PDF for her book, but she exposes how the medical system was hijacked during, it was something called the Flexner Report in about, 1911 or 1916, way back then, and how the allopaths took over the medical system from, I guess prior to that there were a lot of naturopaths, homeopaths.
Well, it was all that. I mean, come on, Faye. When I was a kid, and we would go to visit my grandparents and aunts and uncles and that, and we'd be sitting out at one of the farms. Well, I mean, it was. This is how ludicrous things have become, because we'd be sitting around. I'm a little guy, and grandparents and parents, everybody's talking, and eventually something. I remember. I will never forget this. Some lady was now taking a pill from the doctor, and it was spoken in hush hush. And I'm listening to this, and they say, "Oh, she's gone feeble," right? Because a normal person wouldn't have to take a drug from a doctor, because the whole idea is you eat healthy. And I have a friend who's stuck on fentanyl he had his bones crushed in his leg and his hips and everything, and they put him on fentanyl for pain, and he's trying to get off of it, and he's just having a bitch of a time. And so Michael Schmidt, the milk farmer, who they all home baking and everything's organic and everything, and so Paul started drinking the raw milk and eating properly, and he's managed to use much less of the fentanyl than he was before, and he's absolutely amazed by that. That is just by eating properly,
right?
Not processed foods, not foods that are poisoned, which is basically everything in the grocery store. He's feeling much more healthy, much better in the mind, and he's managed to cut this fentanyl way down. Still isn't off of it yet. He's still struggling with it, but these drugs that they give you are addictive for a reason.
That's right.
You are money to them, and it's a business. And if they get you hooked, then they make lots of money, and they don't give a damn about your health, which is unfortunate. So, how do you? I'm sorry. Go on.
Go ahead.
Well,
I made a handbill there. It was kind of like something you could put on an 8.5 by 11. That was when they came at us. Like, we'd had fluoride out for 5 years, and then they started this big campaign to come at us again. That was last fall, when the city of Calgary again looked at fluoride, and again they upheld their previous decision, the council. And I made a handbill that I put out, and it says on it, an open letter to, and then I had the names of various, they were the public health professionals who were coming out in the newspaper telling us that fluoride was good for us. And so I made that handbill very vitriolic, and in naming names and saying, who in their right mind would be pushing poison again on.
Yeah, I'll put that up on my Facebook. I'm out of jail in 2 more days. Facebook jail. So there's a bunch of this stuff that I want to put up. I was talking to Karen last night, and she's inspiring as all get out. Hats off to her. They haven't beat her down; they're just making her stronger, which is good.
Right.
So I spent most of the show today explaining to people, that you want your nation back, then you're going to have to run at the local council. I don't care how distasteful it is to you, you're going to have to do it. Right. And in the city of Calgary, there's 14 councillors, which means if you run 3-1, which means you control the message now, you need 42 candidates out of over 1 million people to get back control of your local council. How difficult is this, folks?
Well,
right? Just get it done.
What we found is, like, we had 2 good counselors on hand. It was Brian Pincott and Drew Farrell, and they were the ones who, behind the scenes, like Dr. Bob and Dr. Beck were our kind of good allies in City Hall. And when they started working, it turned out that both Dr. Beck and Dr. Bob were in my, aldermanic ward. So, they were getting strong pressure from people here around the university to stop the fluoride. And they put the pressure on, and what was I going to say? I lost the thread of where that was going. I'll come up with it if we keep talking.
Well, the point is that very few people control the system.
2 counselors were able to put the pressure on from behind the scenes, saying, "Look, guys, let's clean this up." And you see, timing was very fortuitous, because it was right after Naheed got in 2011. We hit the council, and the new council, and said, we want this cleaned up. So I suspect that's what's going to happen right after this election. Those buggers are going to go into council and try to push through some kind of mandate. They'll either
there's no doubt.
set up some kind of a poll or God knows what, and they're going to try and put that fluoride back in. So we're in the trenches big time.
Yeah.
But all it takes is 2 people to put forward. Now, people don't know that in order to get something changed, you have to change legislation. You have to do that by using a bylaw. So you have to have a notice of motion to change the bylaw.
Right.
And that's why that document was so instrumental. And we had an open Calgary hearing, and actually that hearing is posted online. It was like a 13, they started at 9 in the morning and went until, 8 o'clock at night. And anybody and everybody who wanted to could come and make a presentation. And it's just a joke when you look at the arguments that were put forward by the so-called health professionals, but then you see the feisty people, the feisty grassroots people who made their little 5-minute presentations. And then the other thing that Dr. Bob and Dr. Beck were able to get to happen, and this was sort of because of Drew Farrell and Brian Pincott, is they were able to, like, after all the kerfuffle, the counselors were still able to ask Dr. Beck questions, and he's the one ethical doctor. He's a Jewish guy, and he's a guy who really had the commitment at the heart, and he just told them, just do it, take it out. This is causing, like, he talked about how it interferes with the absorption of iodine. And, he went into all the kind of technical things about how fluoride works in the body. And because he was a professor emeritus with academic credentials about how to really look at data, well, anybody can look at data. You don't have to have academic credentials. But we were very fortunate to have him on our side.
The funny thing,
and the book he wrote.
Well, the thing about, I just want to say this real quick and butt in here for a second, but what people need to understand is you can take a bowl of numbers and a bowl of words, and you can make them mean whatever you want them to mean, right? And that's why it's so easy to manipulate these so-called datas.
I just wanted to say 2 more things. Like, his book was good. He collaborated with Paul Conant, who's a chemist from down east, and then there was another fellow from Britain. So they wrote that book, the three of them, and it was called The Case Against Fluoridation, Why Toxic Waste is in Your Drinking Water, and the powerful, dirty politics that keeps it there. So that book, we really, and the interesting thing is there were dentists in Calgary who were ethical dentists who didn't use fluoride, and they helped fund that book because they were being demonized by their peers, right? So this has never come out in the media, and these dentists were kind of collaborating. I guess to get anything done, you have to have a gang behind the scenes just working like devils, right?
Well, there's so much money being fired into everything nefarious, and no money being fired into anything good. And when a good man or woman stands up, they come at them like no tomorrow. I mean, they come at them hard.
So what I'm doing behind the scenes is I'm still encouraging people to vote for Chabot as him being the only best bet of the worst of three evils. Like, he isn't the perfect candidate.
No, absolutely not.
Him in will know that probably fluoride will be safe to protect.
I think that Chabot is someone that the public could encourage to do the right thing. That's one thing. I think he's basically at heart an honorable man.
That's right.
But he's in a position there where he's got to play this game. So I encourage everyone to focus on the election in Calgary and study it. And because it's a perfect example of the manipulation of elections and candidates, and who it's absolutely amazing to watch, and it's a good I see the election in Calgary as a good teaching forum for people. But we got about 1 minute, Faye.
Oh, are we on radio?
Yeah.
Oh,
did I not tell you that? I'm sorry. Yeah, we're live. We're off in about a minute. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the vaccine thing, and the comparison between what they're doing with the vaccinations and what they're doing with Karen at the school system are parallels. Same game.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for dropping by on air. Sorry I didn't tell you we're on air. But I much appreciate all the work you and Helen and Karen and all the rest of the good people in Calgary are doing, and there is solutions.
The other thing I wanted to mention is when Vancouver dumped fluoride, all they did is they put out a whole bunch of cartoons, and I've sent you a copy of those cartoons.
I know. I was so overwhelmed with stuff yesterday.
My favorite is, the three professors who are there, and they're debating, well, I think 300 bathtubs of water would kill a person. Well, no, it's more like 400 bathtubs. But those cartoons, just getting them out far and wide.
Well, comedy and humor goes a long ways to getting into people's minds, and it's just one of those things that we can use. So anyways, I want to thank you for being involved in this, and I wish other people would get involved. So I'm going to put up some of Faye's stuff on my Facebook. I know some music, so we got to go. So thank you, Faye. Thanks for listening to 3 o'clock, Al's on behind the woodshed. That's always a good show. And me, I'm going to wrap up a little while.
Killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime. They don't matter. Genocide. Sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for them more. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape.